November 22nd, 1963, a day that lives in infamy in American history when a president was shot in Dallas, Texas. Though someone was arrested for the crime, many theorize that the man apprehended was not the actual perpetrator. Today, we dive back into the world of conspiracy theories as we tackle one of the most layered ones of them all, the assassination of John F. Kennedy. This is Red Web. Welcome back, Task Force, to Season 2 of Red Web, the podcast all about unsolved mysteries, true crime, and supernatural phenomena. And I'm so excited to be back. I'm your resident mystery enthusiast, Trevor Collins, and joining me, hearing this case, probably not for the first time, Alfredo Diaz.
That's right. Red Web 2, Season 2, Revengeance 2.0. We're back, baby.
Too red, too web. Okay. We jumped out the gate, Season 2 movie podcast about mysteries. We're always talking via movies, but we're back. It's happening. Red Web is independent. Task Force, thank you all so much for your patience as we spent May just toiling behind the scenes, just scribbling paperwork. The headquarters is gone, by the way, so we're going to have to start digging again.
We burned all the filing cabinets.
Mm-hmm.
We're now in a little cabin.
Yep.
Okay, we're rebuilding. But with that means, please, we need your support. We need your help. We've got a Patreon, patreon.com/redweb. If you want a bunch of goodies, ad-free episodes of Red Web, movie club, deleted clips from the podcast, episode shout-outs, exclusive Discord access, and more.
There's a lot going on.
Yeah, there's a lot you can get there to support us to keep this thing running.
That's right. We are fully independent now. There's no parent company. There's no budgets. There's no anything like that. But we're very grateful to be able to continue independently with the entire RSS feed and everything like that. Everything that you know from Red Web is able to continue, and we're so excited. But the best way to support us, in addition to sharing us and reviewing us, is patreon.com/redweb, like Fredo said. This launched only a few days ago, and so we're probably not going to have episode shoutouts this episode, but thank you all so much for coming out. Again, Movie Club is our exclusive podcast all about horror movies. Anything from the podcast that we cut that doesn't kind of make sense in the podcast is going to go up there. Just lots of extra stuff to show our gratitude for you guys keeping us on the air and doing this show, exploring mysteries. But with that said, Fredo, I think it's time that we dive back into our first case here in Season 2. It's a big one, a juicy one, in fact. So like I said, Fredo, this is usually you're reacting for the very first time on these mysteries, but this one is so big, I'm sure you haven't missed it. What do you know about this case?
I feel like this is one of the main pillars of conspiracy theories that hold up all the other conspiracy theories. Like this is a big one. This is a rabbit hole of rabbit holes.
Oh my God, yes.
Man, anything and everything is going to be thrown at me here.
I've dissected this from youth to now in so many different documentaries that have come across television and the internet and what have you. I feel like I've heard of this case so many different times. And even still, all the way up to the recording of this podcast, I was working with Jillian on so many of the theories that build off of theories that build off of other conspiracy theories. It is very layered. It is very complicated. And it's so interesting because it's such a public thing that despite all of it, it is awry with some inconsistencies. Ooh, there's room for ne'er-do-wells here, and it's plots galore.
Yeah, I guess like the thing I'll be looking for is like, how much don't we know? You know what I'm saying? Like, I feel like there's going to be a lot of theories about this and evidence that points to this and that, but like, well, what are like the big things that we don't know, right? Like, I know that, like, I don't know, maybe we know what the weapon was, or maybe we know who the person probably is or whatnot, but like, what are the things that are missing here in terms of like this case? Why is it, what are the things that are missing that leads to this case being so difficult to figure out?
Yeah, all the holes. Yeah. So I'll just get ahead of that one. There's not going to be a lot of holes that we isolate, but I'm very curious on the back end of this, with your gut check, what you'll feel was missing. Because even as recently as 2023, 2022, new information's coming out. So, I mean, and you can imagine so. It's a presidential assassination. There's going to be a lot of classified documents and things. But with that said, let me take you back all the way to November 22nd, 1963. Of course, as we all know now, President John F. Kennedy was shot while visiting Dallas, Texas. So Kennedy was visiting to revitalize his relationships with the Texas Democrat Party and to prepare to announce his re-election campaign for his second term. While in an open-top limousine, Kennedy's motorcade drove into Dealey Plaza and past the Texas School Book Depository when the fatal shots were fired around 12:30 p.m. Kennedy was brought to Parkland Memorial Hospital where he was pronounced dead nearly half an hour later. At about 1:15 p.m., police officer J.D. Tippett pulled his car up near 24-year-old Lee Harvey Oswald, who matched suspect descriptions. Oswald shot and killed Tippett with his handgun and was arrested half an hour later. Oswald was charged with JFK's assassination and denied it, but before any trial could take place, nightclub owner Jack Ruby shot and killed Oswald while he was being brought into an interrogation room on November 24th.
Okay. Whoa. So many things here.
We'll pause down.
Like, all right, there is a description of the shooter.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. Cop pulls him over. Cop gets shot. The person's Oswald. Gets arrested. I guess while he's being transported, gets shot by a nightclub owner.
So this is 2 days later. There's actually video of this. While he's detained, I believe he's handcuffed. He's being ushered past a lot of press into an interrogation room where he can then be questioned about the entire event. But, yeah, Jack Ruby, who's a nightclub owner, runs up to him, shoots him right in the stomach, and then he gets grabbed. It's kind of a scuffle at that point, but I think he might even get pushed to the ground. But that's when Lee Harvey Oswald kind of keels over. And I don't know if he died on the spot. Jillian or Christian, do you recall that point?
I'm getting mixed up with
there's so many
with
things.
John Wilkes Booth, the other
Jack
assassin.
Ruby survives, but he dies later.
Yeah. So he's detained now.
Yeah.
But yes, Lee Harvey Oswald, before he can go into interrogation, is killed.
Damn. Because then I feel like we could have interrogated him.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe found some stuff out.
Yeah.
Because then it's also, there's always the big question of like who assassinated JFK. But really, I want to know, and we'll never know, is what goes beyond that. Like,
You mean like the why?
why?
Yeah.
Was it just a random person that was like, I'm going to take matters into my own hands? Or was it someone that was hired? By who?
Those are all the things I want to explore today, 100%. Jillian, did you have something?
Yeah, so Oswald, he didn't die immediately, but he was unconscious and then died at the same hospital that Kennedy died in.
Wild. So on the 24th, not the same day as the president, same hospital,
Mhm.
but also the same day he was shot. Wild. Did you know that, Fredo? Nightclub owner,
No idea.
Jack Ruby. Remember that. We're going to come back around to it because that's one of the spin-off conspiracies, has to do with Jack Ruby in particular. Now, Oswald himself, let's do a little bit of background here. So he was a former Marine. He was trained in sharpshooting, and he also attempted to defect and leave the United States for the Soviet Union, but did not gain citizenship. So now you have a little bit more color as to maybe some motive happening here. But he shot Kennedy from the 6th floor window of the book depository where he was employed at the time. We actually have, just for your convenience, and we'll post this online as well, Task Force, but a kind of map that someone offered, drew online of the whole layout. Of course, there's photos and old satellite imagery of this, but this is a very clear map of the route the motorcade took.
I can't believe it was just out in the open like that.
Right? Just hanging out the window on the 6th floor.
Yeah. Damn. Yeah, 240 feet to the car. That was the length of the shot. That doesn't seem too bad.
Now for a trained sharpshooter,
Yeah, exactly. Like I'm not surprised then that JFK passed away from his gunshot wound, because 240 feet. I mean, they can hit miles.
100%. Oh yeah.
And even then, it's like, it could be a little tricky, but 240 feet, that seems like an easy shot.
Sure.
And then in terms of like the Soviet Union stuff, that's a little wild to me that this is a person that was in the armed forces. Was it military?
Yeah, Marine.
The Marine. Who was, I guess, openly defected?
Yeah, they're like, no, I want to go to the Soviet Union now. And then they're like, nah, we don't want that.
We were just like, I mean, I guess what do you do, right? Well, like, I guess it also depends on what layers of defecting that they want to do. But ultimately, especially during these times, if you're defecting over to the Soviet Union, it makes me feel uncomfortable that you're just gonna roam the streets. But then, like,
Sure.
what do you really charge them with? I mean, I'm
Right.
sure you could charge them with something random, but like, do you?
Right.
Is that ethical to do so? I don't know.
Yeah.
But I mean, they should have. But that's hindsight.
Yeah. And I don't mean to get ahead of myself too, but, people also use that as a conspiracy theory where they're like, was this put upon him post-mortem to kind of backwards provide motive out of this person? Is he a fall guy kind of thing? We'll get into a little bit of that, but
That's true, because people are going to want answers, and
Yeah.
you can just stick a bunch of stuff to him. He's passed away.
Yep. And the Cold War is, we're in it right now.
Yeah.
So the tension between the US and the Soviet Union, it's there. They're a known entity, etc. But man, you can see very quickly how like known facts or just what seem like obvious facts can easily be like twisted and turned and shaken up by conspiracy theorists. But going back to the day of the assassination, the 22nd, on that same day around 2:38 p.m., Vice President Lyndon B. Johnson took the oath and was sworn in as the next president. On November 29th, Johnson created the Warren Commission to investigate the assassination for any conspiracy plots, but they found none and believed that Oswald acted alone, though Oswald's exact motive is still uncertain. That was their conclusion, that there were 3 shots and 1 person, i.e. Oswald. Now, despite the findings of the Warren Commission, many Americans then and still today believe that there was a conspiracy to assassinate JFK. Hence, this entire episode. Witness accounts from that day differ greatly, and you would be astounded at how different they can actually be, but it all kind of makes sense when you think about it. When you're there on site, you're watching the president go by with the motorcade, you're kind of excited by the moment, and you're not expecting an assassination, and so not until all of it's done and the dust settles do you realize kind of what happened, and now you start to think back, what did I experience? What do I remember? And obviously, memories can be fickle. But it just created a lot of entry points.
Yeah, I mean, if someone came to us right now and asked us details about lunch yesterday,
I'm out.
Right? Like, I wouldn't know. Like, I had no idea, no clue whatsoever. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, someone cut us off yesterday. What was the color of the car, the make of the car, or whatever? But like, let me see.
I plead the fifth.
I
don't know.
Yeah, so you're just not expecting that you have to memorize every second of every moment.
Yeah. So to kind of highlight that point, shortly after the assassination, there was a Gallup poll that found 52% of Americans believed that someone else was involved with the assassination other than Oswald. That was that time period, very immediately after.
I mean, off of what grounds?
Just the many different rememberings of the event, the fact that there's only one tape, and we'll talk about that tape, but there's only one film that covered the whole event. It's just that it was so shocking that people thought that there must be a higher motive. Something else must be going on than surface level. But then we kind of all see that. Anytime any government or any news station or whatever says anything, you've always got someone going, yeah, but what about this? What if it was that?
Yeah.
And that's true to time. People have always been that way. But flash forward to 2023, there was a Gallup poll that found 63% of Americans still believed that someone else, in addition to Oswald, was involved with the JFK assassination. So it has grown, which leads us now to kind of the main theory, the magic bullet theory. If you've ever heard of the JFK assassination, you very likely have heard of the single bullet or magic bullet theory. And from this spirals off many different mini conspiracy theories that we'll try to analyze and debunk kind of all concurrently. But is this something that you're familiar with?
That, I've just heard the term, and then just the grassy knoll.
The grassy knoll, that's a big one. So part of the Warren Commission evidence that there was only one gunman is the single bullet theory. Basically, by necessity, to necessitate everything that they analyzed, that there is one bullet that penetrated both the president and the governor of Texas that sat ahead of him. So let me wind it back and walk you through it. So,
I didn't know that. Damn.
Yeah. The governor of Texas, John Connally, was sat right in front of him, and one bullet. I'll kind of break it all down for you, but let me wind it back here.
Holy.
Yeah. Originally, the Warren Commission believed that 2 of the shots hit Kennedy and 1 hit Texas Governor John Connally. In fact, there was a third person that kind of helped clear this up. James Tagg, who came forward. They were the only other injured person on the scene, during the assassination. So Tag had been on the sidewalk near the end of the motorcade route. This would be where the car was planned to go under the triple overpass. There was like a railroad that went over the very end of the route. From his position, Tag was struck in the face by either a ricocheting bullet or a piece of concrete. When recounting his experience, Tag mentions 3 loud sounds, the third of which seems to be a bullet that struck a nearby piece of concrete or like a partition. And then later on, he was told his face was bleeding and he realized he had kind of a minor wound on his face. And he went with that officer to where he was stood, and then they actually found a bullet impression in the concrete. So this kind of solidified to the Warren Commission that one of the 3 bullets missed completely, must have been a misfire, shot down past the car, and then hit the concrete, and then some piece of that then hit Tag. Yeah. So with this in mind, a new conclusion was drawn. 1 bullet hit JFK in the back right of his head, 1 bullet was a misfire that hit the concrete, and that leaves 1 last single bullet to account for the remaining wounds to both Kennedy and Connolly. That's the single bullet we're talking about.
Okay. And that bullet lines up?
So that's where the conspiracy comes to play. That some people believe it doesn't line up whatsoever, and then then I would say it's debunked that it lines up perfectly. And we'll kind of walk into all of that. So authorities were certain that only 3 bullets were fired. They knew this from eyewitness accounts, as well as the 3 spent cartridges found on the 6th floor of the Texas School Book Depository. But the so-called magic bullet would have entered above Kennedy's right shoulder blade, then exited his neck, after which it would enter Connolly's back on his right side, then exited through Connolly's chest, then down through his right wrist before finally stopping and being lodged in his left thigh.
Jesus, that bullet went through so many people.
Yeah.
Even so many of an individual.
Mm-hmm.
Did the governor make it?
The governor survived, yes.
Oh my God.
And in addition to that, a lot of people presume that that shot was not lethal. That if that was the only shot that struck the president, he would have been able to live through it because it didn't hit any vital organs. It would have been traumatic, but he would have survived. Yeah. It's the other shot.
The back right of his head.
Mm-hmm. And that one did some damage. So that was the fatal shot that took him out. And I do want to say before we get any further, there's been a lot of discrepancy as far as the order of those 3 bullets. Tag himself says he heard 3 sounds and the third is the one that struck him. But again, he doesn't even remember being struck. He just remembers bleeding or being told he's bleeding. So I think the Warren Commission landed on the first shot being a misfire, the second shot being the single, i.e. magic bullet, and then the third, of course, the fatal shot to the president's head. Now, critics and conspiracy theorists started calling this single bullet the magic bullet theory because of how unlikely the bullet's path seemed initially. It seemed that the bullet would have had to make a slight S shape to go from Kennedy's right side, come out his left side, curve rightward to re-enter the Texas governor's right side, and then re-exit his left side into his leg. I actually have a diagram that has been drawn to kind of demonstrate that pattern, that it zigzags in the air, and then after Connolly, it dives down into his leg. That's the top diagram you're looking at.
And it's coming from, where is it starting from the front seat? Oh, okay, so it started from the back seat.
So it's coming from the back seat.
Ooh-wee.
And so those are the people that believe or subscribe to the magic bullet conspiracy theory say that how would the one bullet meander through like that? It would have to make so many different turns.
Yeah, I mean, that's a lot of turns. I mean, what's the can a bullet bounce off of tissue and bone?
It's 6.5 millimeter rifle. I remember the Mythbusters actually did an episode on this to see if it was possible. And I think that I don't know. I can't remember that, so I don't want to quote it. But it is possible that the bullet started to tumble and is able to ricochet off bones. So, for example, the final turn, so to speak, of the magic bullet going down to the wrist and leg could have been like a ricochet off of a rib. That is totally possible. Mm-hmm. But before we give too much weight to this has kind of been debunked because there's not a lot of good faith arguments for the alignment of the two individuals.
Yeah, this is pretty wild. It looks like, I'll be honest, it looks like a bullet line from Wanted.
Yeah, right.
You know,
Angelina Jolie's curving bullets.
Curve the bullet.
Right. So this bullet was eventually found at Parkland Hospital later on, and it appeared completely undamaged. and fully intact despite going through 2 bodies, and I believe part of the seat.
Jesus.
The discovery of the bullet is also up for debate. It's unclear exactly who found it, and it is said to have been found on the gurney next to Connolly. Again, it was lodged in his leg when everything went down. So many modern theorists point out that the path was not unlikely because Connolly was actually not sitting directly in front of JFK, but somewhat towards the center of the car, and JFK's seat was raised slightly higher. That is a huge missed fact in this part of the conspiracy theory, is that on one hand, JFK, I'll kind of help you visualize. He's leaning out the car. His right arm is basically fully out of the car as he's waving to people on the right. His armpit is resting on the side. And the way this car is constructed is that the front seat passenger side is moved in a little bit, or at least the governor was sat inward because it's kind of a bench style seating. And also when you watch back the Zapruder film, which we'll talk about, the governor was turned so much to the right to face the audience that it is possible his right side kind of became more where the mid-back would have been. And he kept his right hand on his left leg while turning.
Yeah, because then that just lines everything up.
100%. So that's where the second diagram comes to play, where you see the president more honestly out the side of the car, waving, the governor a little bit more seated in, and then the president slightly raised up, and that actually then makes a perfect straight path through everything I mentioned. The right shoulder and neck going into the right back, chest, right wrist, left leg kind of path.
Jesus. One bullet, so much damage.
Now, regardless of the magic bullet theory and all attempts to try to either bunk or debunk it, it made it possible for a lot of people to theorize that there were additional gunmen, and it made that idea a lot more compelling. It basically was the theory that opened the door to many others, especially because if the single bullet theory was false, the speed at which JFK and Connolly were shot would only be possible by 2 gunmen. So to speak, if it wasn't a magic curving bullet, and they were actually lined up in the seats, which they weren't, but again, kind of going off this theory, in order to strike both men, 2 riflemen would have to shoot at like the same time. That's kind of the theory.
The rate of fire would have to be higher.
Right.
And henceforth, like, to the point where another rifle would have to come into play.
Right. So on January 27th, 1964, the Warren Commission actually received the Zapruder film. It's an 8mm film shot by bystander Abraham Zapruder. It is the only film of the entire event, and it has been analyzed far and wide. I think Life magazine eventually bought this film and tried to up-res it and stabilize it as much as possible so it could stand the test of time. But let's break down some of the facts we know.
How's there only one?
There's only, I know, right? It must have been like a cost thing.
It's film, yeah.
Like motion picture versus like still photography.
Yeah, true.
Yeah. So when they're analyzing this, the Warren Commission knew that the camera shot at 18.3 frames per second. They were also aware that the 6.5mm Mannlicher Carcano rifle used by Oswald could fire on average every 2.3 seconds, or in film terms, 42 frames worth of film time. When really analyzing it, breaking it down frame by frame, it is seen that in frame 205, JFK is waving to people. That's the earliest possible instance that the bullet could be striking him. He then goes behind a sign, comes out from behind that sign, and you see he's reacting. That's about frame 225 or 226. In frame 235 to 240, somewhere in there, depending on the opinions at play, Connolly is the one reacting. So given this all takes place in less than 42 frames, the Warren Commission concluded that it must be one bullet that impacted the president and the governor. But others, even some people on the commission, saw this as proof of a second assassin. Many have since tested this rifle, and it's been shown to fire as fast as 1.66 seconds or 30 frames, which is very close to the timing of these reactions, which again kind of opens the door to a second person. But it also led many to believe that there was 4 shots happening rather than 3 shots. But we'll talk about that in a second.
I absolutely love that. I love that we were able to use the frames from one particular video to line that up in terms of succession of bullet shots for the most part. That is fascinating to me.
Oh, yeah. And with like 3D, like all this modern tech, people have made dot maps of the entire area. So you can fly digitally through that area
Jesus.
completely accurately to the film, line that up with the film, with photos and everything. And so people have done that to not only analyze, did all of this come from the 6th-story window where Oswald would have been, basically either confirm or denying the one assassin theory. It's wild how like modern tech has absolutely elevated the analysis of this case. So to further this conspiracy theory, when Zapruder's footage was released to the public in 1975, over a decade later, the footage showed Kennedy's head moving backwards, which again, many people thought meant that the bullet came from the front rather than from behind. That would be the grassy knoll, because to his front right there's kind of like a fence or a wall there and a slight grassy incline. And that's where people theorize that another shot had either been heard or that's where the shot came from, because some people, again, are thinking like, well, because of the reaction times and the speed and blah, 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 that there must be a second shooter in that grassy knoll area. Eyewitness accounts, like some people caught the sound coming from that direction. It's possible that the acoustics kind of echoed.
I mean, that's acoustics, man. You know,
Right.
How many times are you somewhere and you hear an echo from I don't know, you're in a big echoey location and you can't quite tell where it's coming from.
And that's one very quick, like staccato but loud sound. And because of that, it will reverberate. You know, like we're not all familiar with what gunshots sound like in a downtown setting, you know? But with that said, in 1979, the House Select Committee on Assassinations, a very specific committee, was designed.
Yeah, I was about to say that's very specific.
Yeah. They claimed that there were actually 4 shots fired, not 3. In fact, they're one of the groups that tested the rifle for its firing rate, and they're one of the groups, again, that concluded it can fire as fast as 1.66 seconds between rounds. And there's a lot of other things in there, like I think within that, they assumed that Oswald would have been adrenaline running, and so he wouldn't kind of chamber around, aim and shoot, chamber around, aim and shoot, that he would just be kind of chambering, shoot, chamber, shoot, chamber, shoot.
Right.
And so under those circumstances, they got the time down to like 1.66 seconds. Either way, I'm very excited to talk about how that is analyzed. But before we get there, I do want to give some background. The HSCA was created to find evidence of conspiracy in both the deaths of John F. Kennedy and Martin Luther King Jr., partially as a result of the Zapruder film itself. So they suppose that one shot came from the grassy knoll, maybe that 4th shot, and that there is no magic bullet, that 1 missed, hit the concrete, 2 hit John F. Kennedy in the back shoulder, 3 came from the grassy knoll almost at the exact same time, and then 4 hit Kennedy in the head. That's kind of their thinking.
I mean, is it like seen in the footage that JFK's head goes back?
So, having watched the morbid footage just today, his head does go back into the left when the shot is coming back from the right. Now, the thing is, and this is my take, is that he was just shot and he was holding both of his arms and fists up in front of his neck and face and leaning forward and kind of leaning left towards his wife because he's reacting to having been shot. And then a few seconds later comes the shot that clips the top right of his head, and it's a devastating wound. I mean, you can see viscera for sure.
Oh my God.
And from that, you see his head get pushed directly in the opposite direction to the left. But because he's leaning forward, and it's, again, a pretty devastating wound, he then falls back. He's leaning forward.
Yeah,
so the shot pushes his head left.
Momentum is forward. He could be slouched that way, but then settles backward.
Yes. And so that's my take. That's kind of what it looks like to me. But again, for the sake of complete transparency, that is kind of what people keyed in on. A lot of other people have different takes where they're saying that's gotta be from the front right, which would then be the grassy knoll.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, if you looked at it just really quickly, you only saw it once. It really does look like he's
His head
moving
comes
back.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But it's viewer discretion would be definitely advised on that one. But now this is where it's really, really interesting. So their conclusion on all of this is partially based on acoustic analysis. And so you're wondering, acoustic analysis, it was silent film back in the day. How do they have audio?
Yeah, I'm sorry, what?
Well, I will say before we get into it too deeply, the audio recording has now since been debunked, that there are confirmed 3 shots, not 4.
Oh.
But The way they have that is that there was a motorcycle officer whose radio was stuck in the on position, which then recorded the sounds of the event that day. It's a dictabelt recording, essentially an old analog recording. And I remember watching, I don't know if it was like Discovery Channel or something, watching a documentary about that and just my mind being like blown away by like, oh, they've got audio from that day now too? It was absolutely wild.
Because someone accidentally had their thing on?
Yeah.
That's wow.
Yeah.
Very rarely things happen in our favor, but here we are.
Mm-hmm. We have more evidence than ever, right?
Yeah.
Than we would have expected. So you have modern audio engineers kind of analyzing the waveforms, looking at the reverberation of these sounds, and they can see where the actual shots happen. And then there's a discrepancy. They go, is this an echo, like kind of a reverberation,
Right.
or is this a fourth shot? Like I said, jumping to the conclusion, it's been debunked and confirmed that there's 3 obvious sound waves and the rest are reverberations, but it could also tell you as to why perhaps people are hearing sounds from different spots.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to echo and bounce off of, look, different distances, different material will have it bounce in certain ways. Where are you standing?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like if you set up a home theater system, like it's very important in terms of like your speakers and stuff, like where are you sitting in association to the speakers, and then also height level as well. Like sound plays such a huge level. Like when you walk into a movie theater,
Mm-hmm.
like a lot of that is tuned for the seats. Even then, depending on where you sit, if you're a bit of an audiophile, you can tell the difference of how the audio is reaching you and bouncing
Mhm.
around. Like it's, yeah.
You love lossless audio, right?
Yeah.
When you listen to music or anything. Can you tell the difference? And this is just me geeking out because
Mhm.
I love audio as well. Can you tell the difference between lossless and like MP3 or anything in between?
Yeah, you can, but it requires like a good set of headphones.
Yeah.
And if you're playing off of something like your phone,
Mhm.
like a DAC, just a little amplifier to
Mhm.
it. So like I have, I download all the lossless audio, then I have a little amplifier, and then I have like a really nice pair of IEMs, like in-ear monitors. Now, when I listen to it with a lot of music or even especially like movie scores, I can tell which instrument is in which location of my brain,
Isn't
which
that
is really like,
crazy?
it's really weird. I'm like, oh, okay, the trumpets are the front left,
Dude.
and like
Yeah.
the bass is center, but towards the back of my head. It's really weird. But
I love that.
yeah, there's so many little details. Sometimes backfires because I go, I love this song, and I go, oh, there's like a little like percussion that underlines the whole song that I didn't really hear before,
Ooh.
and it kind of annoys me.
Oh. I thought you were going to say there's
most of the time, you're just like, oh, I didn't really know that there was a subtle like this or that, or
Yeah.
like a keynote strike. But sometimes you just go, oh, that's underlining the whole track.
100%. I thought you were going to say that there's like some mysterious pan flute player that's just like
Just
real quiet.
ripping in the background.
And I'm like, yeah, that would have been me in like band in middle school. I'm like, I'm missing notes and I'm like jumping keys like to an octave up or down just for the fun of it. But I'm blending into the cacophony of a middle school band.
Yeah.
But,
You're just like, I'll just be subtle. Yeah, no, I mean, that's also why, like, when a lot of producers and music makers, they'll kind of tone down what they're actually producing is because of the fact that they know that the majority of the audience has, like, they're listening to music wirelessly, right? They're going for convenience.
It's going to get compressed.
They don't need to have all the details. It's going to be heavily compressed.
Yeah.
And so which is totally fine.
Sure.
But yeah, you'll see some people that kind of just produce stuff that are a lot more low key and simple because of it, because the details will get lost.
100%. Man, I love audio.
I know.
I just love
Cool.
listening to good music. Anyway, I'm geeking out now, but it's wild that is something that happened and we were able to glean so much insight off of an accidental on radio.
That's
love
absolutely astounding.
So the HSCA also found that there was evidence of conspiracy in both assassinations, again, JFK and MLK Jr., which leads to our next theories as to who was involved. Of course, this is the linchpin theory that a lot of other theories have spiraled off of, but now we're talking more who. Again, coming back to your original question, like, why would Lee Harvey Oswald want to assassinate? It could be something simple. It could be a whole conspiracy, a whole plot. So with that said, I'm sure that you would have some instincts for where we're going next. And like an agency, maybe.
Oh, like an Illuminati or something? Like a
We're getting there.
cabal?
Yeah, we're getting there. Yeah, it's of that ilk. So
Okay.
the
Soviet
CIA
Union.
could honestly, it could be. That's not one of the conspiracy theories that we're going to talk about today.
Interesting.
But the CIA is the most commonly believed co-conspirator in the assassination of JFK.
I think I've heard that.
If there was one.
But I never knew the detail. But like, why?
Why?
But why?
That's the question. It's the why. What does Trinity say to Neo? It's the why that drives us. Or is it a different question and I'm just ruining it? She's in the club. She's whispering in his ear. She's got that latex on.
It's gotta be.
It's the question, Neo.
That's what. It's after he
question
followed
that drives
the
us.
white rabbit.
Yeah.
On the shoulder.
I think
know
she
what
says
you're talking
question.
about.
She just
It's the question that drives
Something
us.
Yeah.
like that.
Something like
Oh,
that.
man.
Yeah.
the
I'm a
movies
fake
are
fan.
still on the table, folks. So the Central Intelligence Agency, the CIA, was found to be involved in assassination plots by the Rockefeller Commission. If you're unaware, they are also the group that revealed the MK Ultra kind of experiments to the public. Of particular interest was the plot to assassinate Cuban President Fidel Castro. At the time, there was a very strong anti-communist movement in the CIA, and Cuba was kind of a key player in that. A lot of things happening in the 60s around that. But one example of possible CIA motive is the fact that Kennedy did not give air support during the Bay of Pigs invasion. This was a failed attempt by the CIA to use Cuban exiles to invade Cuba and overthrow Castro in 1961. So when the invasion was made public, Kennedy withdrew his support. So that's some quick groundwork. We'll come back to it all, but after the Kennedy assassination, 3 men were escorted by a police officer near the book depository. They were photographed and subsequently nicknamed the 3 Tramps. Since their faces are unclear, they are believed to be CIA operatives who were involved with the Bay of Pigs. Proponents of the CIA theory claim that Kennedy's lack of aggression towards communism played a large part in the assassination plot. Moreover, Kennedy fired then CIA Director Allen Dulles and had intended to reduce CIA spending, i.e. shrinking their funding, therefore their reach and ability to do what they do. Some believe that Oswald may have been a CIA agent who infiltrated communist groups, or that he was simply a scapegoat for the agency. I mean, walking it all the way back, we know he's a Marine, we know he's a trained sharpshooter, so he has a very specific set of skills.
Yep. But like, I mean, JFK is currently the president.
Mm-hmm.
He's gearing up to run for a second term. I mean, granted, there are always predictions, but like, why not wait to see if he's even winning that second term?
Good call.
I mean, he's already, it does seem like he's already doing a ton of stuff that are in motion or have been in motion to kind of hurt or hinder the CIA. I could see them being, less hesitant and more proactive. But like, just initial gut check is like, well, maybe he doesn't hit another term, but he's already striking him down.
It's interesting. Basically, to distill it all the way down, it comes to intergovernmental departmental differences, right?
Yeah, which is wild.
Yeah, you have the executive branch, the president, going, nah, with the CIA. And they're like, well, hold on a second. And so they go, you're out. Now, it does line up, again, conspiratorially with a few things. I would say like it's kind of coincidence. So it does make, as I would say, maybe a great story, but I don't think it fully substantiates it, right? I don't think it'll forever be a conspiracy theory.
Yeah.
But before we get too far from it, coming back to Oswald, it's interesting to note that Oswald denied the crime and claimed that he was, quote, just a patsy when he was being arrested. In other words, he was the chump. He was the scapegoat for the crime. Some believe that Oswald was set up to take the blame because he had an anti-American background. He wanted to defect to the Soviet Union. But some believe that Oswald was not the killer at all, which could be its own entire theory. But according to the CIA documents released in 2022, the CIA had actually created a profile on Oswald 3 years before the Kennedy assassination. So it was somebody that they were aware of. They were like, this guy raising some flags. Let's keep an eye on him. So
also just seems wild for the CIA to be like, I'm angry, and then assassinate a president.
Yeah. It's a bit outlandish.
It just seemed pretty far out there that there would be like, okay, I don't know, man, just to take just to take that shot and that chance, that opportunity. But also I could see just the government overall covering it up, being like, hey, like we can't let the public know that our own different departments are at odd ends with each other. And
yeah, it's interesting. I mean, that's
hard,
where I have to leave
swallow,
it.
Though.
It is. That's my personal take. But it's interesting because you think, all right, let's just ignore all my preconceived notions, right? Maybe the CIA is kind of acting a little bit more autonomously, right? And maybe they want their own level of power and reach. And when the president, a very public form of power, kind of goes, no, you go, or whoever in the CIA, this ambiguous figure goes, all right, well, we think we can get away with this and point the finger completely somewhere else. So we're going to stay the secret power and take you out. You know, that's kind of what this is sitting on. And now this is where I speak on foggy memory, but there's another kind of operation that, and I'll be very high level because I don't want to misspeak. I don't want to put out false history here, but I've once read about a program called Operation Northwoods, which was a operation proposed by, I believe, the CIA, and it kind of feeds into this theory. And long story short, if you want to look into that, you can. It was essentially a pitch that never happened, and this is where I'm going, I'm not sure if it was confirmed or not. That's where I'm just going to put that out there. But apparently JFK is like, no, we're not going to do that. We're not doing this operation. It's going to endanger lives, etc. And that was another motive that conspiracy theorists have, as to say the strain between the CIA and JFK, it was strong. So again, just another one of those things that offers weight to the strain between the two.
But then again, it's also like the domino effect that it could have if it was the CIA, right? Like the head of department, if was there any issues like there that did they have to step down, whatnot? I don't know. I feel like there'd be like a domino effect. It wouldn't just be like as easy as like, yeah, I don't know those. I didn't know them well. They're, you know, I'm the head of this department, or I'm the manager of them, or whatnot. That whole chain, and just go. They acted on their own.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I feel like there'd be consequences.
Yeah.
But I mean, with Oswald, we have him completely dead to rights on the weapon, right? Like it's
right. So the succinct answer is eventually they did find palm print on the rifle, some DNA evidence accordingly. Of course, he had opportunity because he worked there. Some eyewitnesses saw him leaving from the building, so they got his look, so they could make a description. And then several blocks away, sometime soon thereafter, a police officer rolled up, saw this guy and goes, "You look like the description," went to attain him.
I mean, that's right.
He
did shoot.
And then he shot.
A police
that's
officer.
Not helping his case.
Right? Like, I mean, come on.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah.
You know, even if you're detained and if you didn't do it, then sure. But like, you don't do that unless.
Right.
I feel like that's.
You're hiding something.
Yeah,
you've got
big.
business that you didn't want exposed.
Yeah.
So, one of the many CIA sub-theories is Jim Garrison's New Orleans theory. This was something I wasn't super familiar with, so I was really interested to kind of read about it. So in 1969, New Orleans attorney Jim Garrison brought a man named Clay Shaw to trial over his alleged part in the plot to assassinate JFK. Garrison's theory is largely the same. The CIA and Oswald were co-conspirators, etc. But the major difference focuses on Oswald's summer in New Orleans, Louisiana, the year prior. In addition to Oswald are his former Civil Air Patrol squadron members. You have Clay Shaw, you have Guy Bannister, and you have David Ferry. So apparently after the assassination went down, there was just some other different attorney received a phone call from a Clay Bertrand asking him to defend Oswald in court. This was kind of suspicious to Garrison, who noticed two things. One, the first name of the person calling in was Clay, which was very similar to Clay Shaw. And then the second fact that Garrison is kind of leaning on is that Guy Bannister, one of the other three, he had a business that shared the same building as a pro-Cuban group.
Right, so this building was home to the CIA-backed Cuban Revolutionary Council, and the address of the building was found on political leaflets that Oswald passed out in New Orleans.
Now, there's a lot of hearsay, a lot of circumstantial evidence, a lot of things to really break down detail-wise, but suffice to say, the trial focused on Clay Shaw since everyone else had passed away by that point. Now, it's incredibly reductive, but this is how Garrison approached the case. They argued that Clay Shaw's homosexuality is what led to the assassination. They even tried to ask for doctors to help prove that this is something that would influence him to want to kill the president. Of course, we have so much more understanding as a people right now.
Jesus, what in the hell?
100%. But that's what he was kind of leaning on. It's just like, well, maybe this, right? So Clay Bertrand, this name, likely did not exist. One of Garrison's investigators found that the attorney who received this call apparently made it up. And so Garrison is kind of leaning on a lot of very flimsy evidence to get this guy who was once associated with Lee Harvey Oswald and then using his personal characteristics to then get him arrested or what have you. Like, it's pretty wild.
So
But
it sounds like a waste of time.
sounds like a huge waste of time, but it's kind of one of those sub-theories to this whole CIA angle. Another interesting sub-theory focuses on a bystander named, or nicknamed, I should say, the Umbrella Man. This one's wild.
Okay.
Oh, it's super CIA coded. So the Umbrella Man was the only person, it does stand out. When you look at the film, you look at any photography, it's the only person with an open umbrella despite the clear day.
Could be hot as hell out though.
That's what I'm saying. A lot of people with fair skin pop those umbrellas to save themselves from the rays.
Look, it's weird, yes, but I mean, look, it's socially weird. That's what it is.
Sure.
It's socially
For
weird.
1960s Texan America, sure.
Yeah, but I mean, you're in
100%.
Texas. It's probably blazing hot. You don't want to get eaten, like sunburned, eaten up. You don't know what time the president's rolling
Sure.
through.
Oh, great point.
Right? You could be sitting there for hours.
100%.
Pop an umbrella. Socially, you look weird as hell, but you're comfortable. You're way more comfortable than everyone else baking in the sun.
They're like, it's not raining, sir. Put that away. Shush now. It's
Shade
hot.
is shade.
Have you ever stepped under a tree in the summer? Come on. There's a great decline in temperature.
Real big time.
So you post up with an umbrella, you're going to create yourself a little ecosystem.
Yeah.
You know?
This weird person with an umbrella creating their own shade for themselves.
Right.
And like, yeah, it's November, but it's still pretty hot here in November.
Yeah.
They can still be pretty
It can
hot.
range.
Yeah.
But that is a good point. If it was November, it does offer a little bit more interesting kind of eyebrow raise activity.
Yeah.
But anyway, I digress. So conspiracy theories believe that he might have been the person who shot JFK from the grassy knoll, or that he paralyzed Kennedy, or that he did something to interfere with Kennedy to make him an easier target in a moving vehicle. That's kind of the many different facets this sub-theory takes on. Either way,
I don't understand. Like, if he didn't, if the theory isn't that he shot him, that he distracted him in some way. Like, is he like just with the umbrella going, "Hey,
He's going,
hey, over here, hey, over here, hey, over here, look at this, look at
Open and
this.
close,
Hey,
open and
hey,
close.
look at this. Hey, you like that? Take a look at this move." It's just like
he's just
I don't
like
and
sign
to
twirling with an
get
umbrella?
Yeah, I don't know. You know what I mean? To get Kenny to like
look at this.
move a certain
Skipping him
angle. Oh, hey, hey,
he
hey,
opens
whoa.
it and it says, who was the other candidate at the time? I just wanted to, like, he opens it and it's the other candidate.
Yeah,
And he
other
goes,
candidate.
I vote for not JFK.
Yeah.
But, or it's like Hagrid and he's got his giant pink umbrella and he casts him spelled. I don't know.
And that's what I'm saying, though. Like, to cause a distraction? What?
Yeah.
I was just going to say, it was Richard Nixon he defeated. to become president,
Whoa.
Jonathan.
Oh.
So the umbrella could have said Nixon on it. Okay.
Nixon's
okay.
face with a kissing.
Well, we know how that story ended. Either way, okay, furthering this theory is the fact that the CIA had previously been working on unique weapons through MK Naomi until 1970. Another MK project,
Jesus.
perhaps its own episode someday. Further, weapons developer Charles Sensini told the Senate that there was a possibility that, quote, an M1 projectile could be fired from a cane, also an umbrella, end quote, in the hearings for the Senate in 1975. This was also the church committee that was investigating abuses by the CIA, the NSA, the FBI, the IRS. It was a whole other thing. But suffice to say, within that, someone is saying a weapon could be shot from a cane or an umbrella, opening that door.
I mean, damn, like, what a shot then.
Yeah. Or again, it was it one of those like, distraction kind of things where like they shot a pellet or some sort of projectile that then like just kind of distracted him, or I don't know, man.
I feel like what's the point of that? All you're going to do is like mess up the timing
Right.
of somebody else, right? If JFK's like in his car comfortable waving at people, and he hears a pop before there's a distraction pop before the real pop. Like he could be down, in between the car seats, like in the matter of seconds. Like
Right.
Yeah, it's just weird. It's a weird theory.
You alarm him way before
Right, yeah, exactly.
the act. Yeah. It's a really interesting, like, again, it's
Yeah.
from an entertainment standpoint alone, cutting out all the morbid, it's like, okay,
That's true.
that's
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah.
That could be
The
a thing.
Umbrella Man.
Right. But of course, the CIA is an easy target since they're, by design, so secretive. And the House Select Committee claimed that they did not find any CIA involvement in the assassination when they looked. But they also thought there were 4 shots, so I'm just going to put that out there.
Right.
Yeah. So when you talk about motive, you talk about opportunity, there's another answer that almost is too obvious. One that I haven't really thought too deeply about before, but kind of makes sense, and I'd like to explore it now. Because another popular theory is that Vice President Lyndon B. Johnson, aka LBJ, was involved in the plot to kill Kennedy. Motive. It is said that Kennedy was seriously considering a different vice presidential candidate for his second term run, thereby removing LBJ from office. And the opportunity, Kennedy was visiting Texas due to its status as a swing state, and much of the trip was planned by LBJ's personnel. So he was very likely aware of the multiple turns in the motorcade route, which would cause this car to slow down, where the car would be at what times, as well as the 20,000 windows along that route. Plus, this was not the Secret Service's original planned route. There was a change to it that came from Connolly, reportedly, who requested the change, and Connolly was known to be one of Johnson's allies. So there's your motive and your opportunity there.
That is very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
It's,
He's like, you won't keep me as VP? Then I will become the P.
that is wild, though.
Do you think the president ever says, I'm the P. Look at me. I'm the P.
No.
You don't think that goes hard?
I don't think behind closed doors. You know what I'm saying?
Closed doors. He goes, please call me P. Like, if you know him really well, shakes your hand, pulls you in, says in your ear, just P.
Just pee.
That was a terrible time to drink water.
but like, I don't know. The vice president takes over. How long are they really going to be president for?
It's true. Let's see. I got to do
For the
backwards
rest of
math.
the term?
I'm not aware of election years, so I have to back it out from when I was born. So I go, all right, 92, 88.
JFK was elected in 1960.
Okay, there you
So it
go.
was about a year before election year would have happened.
Gotcha.
So
Thank you for
what?
that.
Like assassinate a president so you have a year of presidency before elections?
Yeah, and maybe you run and then don't get elected because what, Nixon won after that, right? Or did LBJ get voted in
I think he
after?
got voted in, didn't he?
Did it? Listen, I'm a millennial. I've glossed over history books. No, see, these are the further details outside of the mystery. I'm very good at the mystery part.
Yeah, no, LBJ was president
Okay,
after
so there you
the
go.
following term.
Bingo, 5 years as president. How about that?
Ooh, 5 years. Okay. Well,
Nixon was really waiting in the wings there, huh?
yeah, he was.
And Nixon was after LBJ.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. I mean, the route change is interesting.
It is.
That's, I think it's still a little far-fetched that the vice president was like, no, and I'm going to assassinate you for it. Like, that's a huge, evil plot.
It's a pretty nefarious plot.
But man, it is very juicy with the whole route change. But
Yeah.
that's supposedly though, right?
No, it was definitely a route change.
Okay.
It's reportedly coming from the Texas governor,
That's
who
right.
was a good
Close
friend
with,
of LBJ.
yeah.
Yeah. So that's the part that's more reportedly, but the route did change away from what the Secret Service itself
But
had initially
then that
planned.
involves the governor who got shot.
Yeah. I think it might be that.
Like, why would he sit on the same side then?
Yeah, he's like, I'm gonna get a different car.
Yeah.
Why? We should get a roof. you don't need one. I'll get a roof.
But then
He's got a bulletproof umbrella.
Yeah. And then also on top of that, I mean, it's public knowledge, right?
Right. Yeah.
The
So
route.
the change would definitely be public. I think, to pull back the mysterious curtain and maybe give you some dry answers, I think that if it was the governor or whoever, the Secret Service is like, this is a good route. It's succinct. It's keeping you exposed as minimal as possible. Whereas this other route that it changed to might have maximized FaceTime with people because, again, he's trying to turn a swing state.
People.
He was campaigning in the state, wants to swing it over. So to further this theory, though, we've only kind of kissed the surface. LBJ was the person who selected each member of the Warren Commission, as well as deciding to remove the limousine from evidence. So there's opportunity there to kind of play fast and loose with evidence, right? Remove the limousine as part of it.
Remove the limousine?
I don't know. But one of the biggest results of that is the confusion on where people are sat, how the bullet trajectory, like it opened the door to the magic bullet theory because people couldn't like really analyze the height difference and the seating difference. But also by being the person that built the commission, the theory kind of purports that he could puppet master the direction.
Right.
Yes, just find the person and make sure you conclude that it's that person and make it look convincing is kind of the conspiracy.
Oh, man. I mean, that's got more weight to it than I thought it would.
Yeah, it's not as simple as just, I want to become the P.
Right, exactly.
It is deeper.
Yeah.
And JFK goes, you gotta stop calling me that.
You gotta stop it.
You gotta stop. He likes letters.
Stuck.
LBJ.
Yeah.
Now he's the P.
Yeah. It hasn't stuck. It's not going to stick.
No, it's not going to stick. So Lyndon B. Johnson, now to re-lengthen his name, he was the former governor of Texas. And according to author Joachim Houston, who was supposedly the originator of the theory, Johnson was connected to the local law enforcement branches in Dallas, including the CIA. So now we're stitching it all together. So Watergate co-conspirator E. Howard Hunt recorded a claim before his death that Johnson ordered the CIA to kill Kennedy. However, it's theorized that his sons pressured him to say this. Again, we've got a lot of loose and fast facts here, but this is, I guess if he was a co-conspirator in the Watergate case, we might have someone who's a little lacking of trust.
Yeah.
And this is where Nixon shows up again.
But then pressured by sons?
Because he was elderly, like
Yeah.
Might be elder abuse kind of thing.
Yeah, to kind of get something out of it. Whether it be threat or will activity, that stuff I don't know, but it's more just like, that's the theory. So layers of doubt combined with layers of theory, it's flimsy, right? So others believe that the local mob or other organized crime syndicates might have been involved in the assassination. This brings us all the way back to Jack Ruby, because it's unknown exactly why Jack Ruby assassinated Oswald, but many people use that action to theorize that he might have been involved, and that he did that to keep Oswald quiet. Ruby's involvement could be related to the CIA, could be related to Johnson, depending on the theory, could be related to something completely different, and maybe he owed him money. You could make up anything. But while this entry is interesting, the theory regarding LBJ, I should say, there's no real evidence besides hearsay that LBJ wanted JFK assassinated.
Yeah, I mean, there's some really nice, juicy pieces of information that link to some juicy theories. That's a tough one to believe.
Yeah.
But then also the nightclub owner shooting Oswald to keep him quiet. What?
That almost feels like...
Don't snitch on me. Anyways, here's my face.
Right. That could have been a totally other thing where they had an interaction together themselves, and he goes, I don't know what you're going to say when you go in there. It could be about the assassination. It could be about me. I'm just going to get you out of the picture. Or it could be conspiracy, where this guy was hired by greater powers.
True.
It's all out there. Hey, Task Force, this is Trevor from the future. We've had some time to do some extra research, but in regards to the question of why Jack Ruby killed Lee Harvey Oswald, it's kind of a volatile cocktail of information, but I want to reference a few resources. Looking at American Heritage, and I'm quoting them, they say, quote, Ruby, who was Jewish, killed Oswald because he feared that Jews would be blamed for Kennedy's death. He hoped that if a Jew killed Oswald, Jews would not be blamed for Kennedy's assassination, end quote. And so we see that there's a lot of complexity happening with why Ruby was there and why he killed Oswald, because it wasn't just the anti-Jewish sentiment that he was worried about. In fact, Ruby, per New York Times, had a volatile temper, was easily moved to violence, especially in relation to anti-Jewish remarks. But there were also notes of psychosis. There's been references to using amphetamines and other things that create a very volatile cocktail for why Ruby ended up killing Oswald in the moment. But I wanted to jump back in and give this extra context. Back to the episode.
It does. I mean, it does seem like we got the person though. Now, whether or not like that reaches to the VP wanting the P and then like the CIA wanting to take over, that's a whole different story. But I feel like Oswald was the person.
It does seem to make the most sense. It requires the least assumptions, and it has the most evidence if you're taking it all at face value. I don't want to be the person that's sitting out here that says doubt everything, right?
Yeah.
But, what fuels conspiracy theories is the fact that there are secret agencies, and they are secretive by design, like I said.
Yep.
But you also have conspiracy theorists going like, well, anything can be fabricated, anything can be planted. And if you're living that life, life must be tough because you have no trust in anything.
Right.
But that is kind of the foundation for a lot of the conspiracy theories. But for this particular case, unlike some of the kind of theories we've talked about in our past, it is interesting that so many things were by experts debunked, wildly and deeply analyzed. And then it all came back to what the Warren Commission initially landed upon, which is, again, Oswald acting alone, shooting 3 shots, 1 missing, 2 hitting.
Right.
And the rest is literal history.
Yeah. I feel like it was 3 shots. I feel like the way they lined up is how the bullet went through different pieces. I do think it's a little weird that they took the car out of the equation.
It is strange.
I can't wrap my head around a reason why
It was
they would
in
do
the
that.
investigation, but then like instead of leaving it with evidence, they were like, let's refurbish it.
Oh,
like,
okay. So maybe a cost-saving measure. He's like, I want that limo.
I guess
Weird.
Yeah. Do we have any other evidence on like what happened to that or why?
Well,
other
it
than
was
that?
it was impounded for evidence, and then they took the windshield, and then they kept that, and then the car itself was sent back to, I think, the Ford factory, and then just refurbished, turned into another vehicle for use.
I mean, that does feel weird. I agree with you, Fredo. But it could be simple as we've got all the evidence possible out of this thing, took all the photos, got all the data off of it, and there's not really much else to do.
Okay, yeah, I can see that.
Because eventually it does have it. It won't stay in lockup forever.
They're
I
not just
suppose.
gonna be like keep a warehouse and that's the car.
Yeah, I'm sure it's also a very expensive custom. I mean, it has no roof, but also maybe bulletproof presidential style vehicle.
Yeah.
I don't know. But those are the main conspiracy theories surrounding the case. As Jillian kind of identified, there are so many smaller conspiracy theories that spin off in so many different directions. Maybe in the future we can come back on a shorter episode and explore some of those. But otherwise, this is a really, again, just another morbidly fascinating case. It's touched our history. It's part of our lives.
Oh yeah.
And just growing up, it's hard to not be aware of it. But it's one of those cases where the more I pour over the details, the more I'm still like, wow, that's just like, we've come so far technology-wise, but also it's amazing how many times you can pour over the same data and still kind of have some, I don't know, you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, for sure.
It's interesting in that way.
Like technology will only get us so far until you make like a huge breakthrough. Like seems like the impossible, like time travel or something like that, right?
Yeah.
But it's really cool that like as technology progresses, like Dyatlov Pass, right?
Yeah.
Like, what was it? The Disney movie, then the tech behind the snow.
Right,
there.
Frozen 2, the way they...
that technology.
The CFD, that I put it into my terms, but the computational fluid dynamics of how like snow would fall and land and how it would interface with itself and particle physics in a computer totally backwards gave us insight into that case. It's wild.
Which is wild.
What Disney case will help us crack this one?
Exactly. Exactly.
Rapunzel.
Yeah.
Or what is that one called actually?
Tangled.
Yeah, sorry, Rapunzel. It's one of my fiance's favorite
this
movies.
is an iconic case, though.
Yeah,
nonetheless.
All right, well, that brings us to a close of the first episode back as an independent phoenix of Red Web. Thank you all again, Task Force, for turning up, showing your support, and honestly just being patient with us. Fredo, how you feeling?
Feel great. Season 2, Red Web, Rise of the Phoenix, Meltdown. It's an awesome season. I'm very excited to continue things independently from here on out.
Maybe this is the season where your X gene finally wakes up and we figure out what your power is.
It's going to be really mundane.
You're going to melt. You're just going to be that senator that melts like Squonk.
That's unfortunate.
Well, speaking of Squonk, we do have a Squonk tier on our Patreon, patreon.com/redweb. Again, it is the best way to support us now that we are independent. Ad-free content, Movie Club, the exclusive podcast that we offer to you guys about horror movies. We've got deleted clips every now and then, some extra bonus content when we have it, the Discord access, a lot of things happening over there. So go check it out. But thank you all again so much. And with that said, Fredo, I'll see you right back here next week for yet another mystery.